When Clara Wynne arrives at Stone Ridge Farm with nothing but a backpack and dark circles under her eyes, she's running from a dangerous past. What she finds is more than just a job. She discovers healing, purpose, and an unexpected connection with the brooding farm owner Asher Tate. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from. The morning sun was just starting to peek over the hills when Clara Wynne arrived at Stone Ridge Farm. She had no car, just a worn backpack slung over her shoulder. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail and dark circles under her. Eyes told the story of someone who hadn't slept well in weeks. Clara took a deep breath before approaching the large white farmhouse. Her hands trembled slightly as she raised her fist to knock on the wooden door. The sound was soft, barely audible above the morning birds. When the door opened, she found herself face to face with Asher Tate. At 32, he was tall and handsome in a rugged way. His dark hair was slightly messy and his blue eyes seemed guarded as he looked at the stranger on his doorstep. "I heard you might need help," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Asher frowned. "Who told you that?" "In town, at the diner. Someone mentioned Stone Ridge was short-handed." Clara shifted her weight from one foot to the other. What she didn't say was that she'd been desperate for any lead that would take her far from the city, far from him. She didn't mention the fear that had kept her moving for weeks, or the relief. She felt being somewhere so remote. Asher studied her for a long moment. Something about her seemed both fragile and determined. Her clothes were simple but clean, and despite her obvious exhaustion, she stood straight, ready to work. "There's a stall that needs mucking. If you're willing," he finally said. Clara nodded, quickly. "I'm willing to do whatever needs doing." "The pay isn't much," Asher warned. "I don't need much," she replied. Asher stepped aside to let her in. "There's a small room above the barn. It's nothing fancy, but it's clean. You can stay there if you want." Relief washed over Clara's face. "Thank you. That would be perfect. Linda." Mason, Asher's housekeeper for the past 15 years, looked up from the stove as they entered the kitchen. Her gray hair was pulled back in a bun, and her kind face showed surprise at the sight of the young woman. "Linda, this is—" Asher paused, realizing he hadn't asked for a name. "Clara," she filled in. "Clara Wynne." Linda wiped her hands on her apron and smiled warmly. "Well, Clara Wynne, you look like you could use some breakfast. Sit down and I'll fix you a plate." Clara hesitated. "I should get to work first." "Nonsense," Linda insisted. "No one works at Stone Ridge on an empty stomach. That's my rule, and even Mr. Bossy here knows better than to argue with me." A hint of a smile crossed Asher's face before disappearing again. "Better do as she says. I'll show you around after breakfast." As Clara ate scrambled eggs and toast, Asher explained the basic routine of the farm. Stone Ridge was no ordinary farm. It was one of the most successful horse breeding operations in the state. Asher had a reputation for raising some of the finest quarter horses around. "Do you have experience with horses?" he asked. Clara nodded. "Some. I worked at a riding stable for a couple of summers during college." "Good," Asher said. "That'll help. We've got 23 horses right now, including 3 pregnant mares. The spring foaling season is coming up, which is why we're short-handed." After breakfast, Asher gave her a quick tour of the property. Stone Ridge Farm stretched over 200 acres of rolling green hills. The main barn was a large red structure with white trim, immaculately maintained. Inside were 12 stalls, a tack room, and a small office. "The other horses are in the south pasture," Asher explained. "They come in during bad weather or when they need special care." He showed her to the stall that needed cleaning, then handed her a pitchfork and shovel. "I'll be back to check on you later. If you need anything, ask Linda or Miguel. He's the stable hand who's been with me for years." With that, Asher left her to her work. Clara took off her jacket, rolled up her sleeves, and got started. The physical labor was exactly what she needed, something to focus on, something to tire her body and quiet her mind. By midday, Clara had cleaned 2 stalls and was working on a third. Sweat dampened her shirt and her muscles ached, but she kept going. The barn door opened and an older Mexican man entered carrying a bucket of water. "So you must be Clara," he said with a friendly smile. "I'm Miguel. Linda said you were working in here. She told me to bring you some water and tell you lunch is ready. Clara wiped her forehead with her sleeve. Thank you. I'll just finish this. Stall first. Miguel nodded approvingly. Hard worker, that's good. Asher likes that. He works harder than anyone you know. Does he? Clara asked, curious about her new employer. Oh yes. Ever since his brother died, Asher barely stops. Like, he's trying to do the work of two men. Clara's interest was piqued. His brother? Miguel's expression grew somber. Jason. Died in an accident right here on the farm 6 years ago. Terrible thing. Asher hasn't been the same since. Before Clara could ask more questions, the subject of their conversation appeared at the barn door. Asher's eyes moved from the clean stalls to Clara. You work fast, he said, sounding impressed despite himself. I like to keep busy, Clara replied simply. Lunch is ready, Asher said. Come up to the house when you're done here. At the farmhouse, Linda had prepared sandwiches and homemade potato salad. Clara sat at the large kitchen table, trying not to look too eager as she ate. It had been days since she'd had a proper meal. So, Clara, Linda said, as she refilled Clara's glass with iced tea. Where are you from? Clara tensed slightly. Back east, small town. You probably wouldn't know it. And what brings you all the way out here? Linda pressed gently. Clara stared down at her plate. Just looking for a fresh start. Asher, who had been quietly eating his lunch, looked up. Something in Clara's tone must have resonated with him. Linda doesn't mean to pry, he said. But we don't get many strangers out here looking for work. It's fine, Clara said quickly. I understand. I don't have references if that's what you're worried about, but I'm a hard worker and I learn fast. I can see that, Asher admitted. The stalls look good. After lunch, Asher showed Clara to her room above the barn. It was small but cozy, with a single bed, a dresser, and a small bathroom attached. The window overlooked the pasture where horses grazed peacefully in the afternoon sun. It's not much, Asher said, echoing his earlier words. It's perfect, Clara replied, and she meant it. After weeks of cheap motels and sleeping in her car, this room felt like luxury. I'll let you get settled, Asher said. Come back to the barn when you're ready, and I'll show you how to mix the feed. When Asher left, Clara sat on the edge of the bed and for the first time in weeks allowed herself to cry. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, and of lingering fear. But as she wiped her eyes and looked out at the peaceful scene below, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The next few days fell into a comfortable routine. Clara woke before dawn, helped with feeding the horses, cleaned stalls, repaired fences, and assisted Miguel with the daily chores. Every task she was given, she completed efficiently and without complaint. Asher watched her from a distance. There was something about Clara that intrigued him. Her quiet determination, the careful way she moved around the horses, the shadows that sometimes crossed her face when she thought no one was looking. One evening, about a week after Clara's arrival, Asher found her in the barn, talking softly to Willow, one of the pregnant mares. You're going to be a great mom, Clara was saying as she brushed the horse's mane. Your baby is lucky to have you. Asher cleared his throat to announce his presence, and Clara looked up, startled. Sorry, he said. I didn't mean to interrupt your conversation. To his surprise, Clara smiled. It was the first real smile he had seen from her, and it transformed her face, making her look younger and lighter. Willow and I were just getting to know each other, she said. She's going to foal soon, isn't she? Asher nodded, approaching the stall. In about a month. She's one of our best mares. This will be her third foal. Clara continued brushing the horse's mane. She seems very calm. She is, not all of them are. Storm, the black mare in the end stall, gets nervous. We'll have to watch her closely when her time comes. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Asher said, You're good with them? The horses, I mean. They're easy to be good with, Clara replied. They don't judge. They don't lie. They just are. Asher studied her profile in the dim barn light. Not like people, huh? Clara's hand stilled on the brush. No, not like people. The moment was interrupted by Linda calling from the farmhouse that dinner was ready. As they walked up to the house together, Asher surprised himself by asking, "Would you like to join us? For dinner, I mean, unless you'd rather." "Eat in your room." Clara hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that, thank you." Dinner that night was different from Clara's previous meals at Stone Ridge. Instead of eating quickly in the kitchen before returning to work, she sat at the dining room table with Asher and Linda. The conversation flowed more easily than Clara had expected, mostly because Linda kept it going with stories about the farm and the local community. "You should see this place during foaling season," Linda told Clara. "It's like a nursery. Asher barely sleeps, checking on the mares all hours." "Of the night. They're my responsibility," Asher said simply. "And he takes responsibility very seriously," Linda added, giving Asher a fond but exasperated look. "Too seriously, if you ask me. Life needs balance." Asher's phone rang, interrupting the conversation. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "Excuse me, I need to take this." He left the room and Clara could hear his voice low and tense from the hallway. Linda sighed. "That'll be Howard Jenkins, his lawyer, always calling with some problem or other." "Problems with the farm?" Clara asked. Linda shook her head. "Business stuff. Asher owns more than just this farm. His father left him quite an empire. Real estate, stocks, all sorts of investments. Asher would rather just focus on the horses, but there's always something." Demanding his attention, Asher returned, his expression grim. "Sorry about that. Everything okay?" Linda asked. "Fine," Asher said shortly, but it was clear from his tone that everything was not fine. Later that night, Clara couldn't sleep. The conversation with the lawyer seemed to have upset Asher, and though it was none of her business, she found herself concerned. After tossing and turning for an hour, she decided to go for a walk. The night was clear, with a full moon illuminating the farm in silver light. Clara wrapped her sweater tighter around herself and headed toward the pasture. To her surprise, she saw a figure leaning against the fence, Asher. She hesitated, not wanting to intrude on his solitude, but he had already spotted her. "Can't sleep," he called softly. Clara approached and stood beside him at the fence. "No. Too many thoughts." Asher nodded. "I know the feeling." They stood in silence, watching the horses moving like shadows in the moonlit pasture. "My brother and I used to do this," Asher said suddenly. "Stand here at night, planning the future of Stone Ridge." Clara remained quiet, sensing that Asher rarely spoke of his brother. "Jason loved this place as much as I do," Asher continued. "Maybe more. He had all these ideas for expanding, making Stone Ridge the premier breeding facility in the state. What happened to him?" Clara asked gently. Asher's jaw tightened. "Accident. 6 years ago. He was working with a new stallion, powerful animal, not fully trained. Something spooked the horse. Jason was thrown and hit his head on the fence. Post right over there." He pointed to a spot not far from where they stood. "I'm so sorry," Clara said. "I was in a meeting in the city," Asher said, his voice hollow. "Business stuff that I thought couldn't wait if I'd been here." "You can't know that you could have prevented it," Clara said softly. "No, but I should have been here. That's the point." Asher turned to look at her, his eyes intense in the moonlight. Family should be there for each other no matter what. Clara felt a pang in her chest. Yes, they should. Asher seemed to realize he had said more than he intended. Anyway, after Jason died, I made a promise to keep Stone Ridge going exactly as he would have wanted, to never let anything threaten what our family built. The intensity in his voice made Clara wonder what was threatening the farm now. What had the lawyer called about? But she didn't feel she had the right to ask. Instead, she said, "It's a beautiful place. Your brother would be proud." Asher's expression softened slightly. "Maybe. There's still a lot to do." A comfortable silence fell between them. It was the most Asher had spoken to her since her arrival, and Clara felt a strange connection forming. Two people with secrets and sadness finding momentary peace in the quiet night. Finally, Asher spoke again. "We should try to get some sleep. Early start tomorrow." As they walked back toward the barn and the farmhouse, Asher said, "Thank you." "For what?" Clara asked. "For listening. I don't talk about Jason much. Sometimes it helps to say things out loud," Clara said. "Even when it hurts," Asher nodded. "Good night, Clara." "Good night, Asher." As Clara climbed the stairs to her room, she felt something shift inside her. For the first time in months, she had connected with someone. It was small and fragile, but it was there, a beginning. What she didn't know was that her past was already catching up to her. In a sleek office in the city, a man in an expensive suit was studying her picture and making phone calls. He had found her at last, and he had no intention of letting her go. The next morning, Clara woke before her alarm. The conversation with Asher had stayed with her through the night. There was something comforting about knowing she wasn't the only one carrying pain. As she made her way down to the barn, she found Asher already there, checking on Willow. "Morning," he said with a nod. His expression was guarded again, as if regretting his openness from the night before. "Good morning," Clara replied, keeping her tone light. "Everything okay with her?" "Fine. Just being careful." Asher handed Clara a mug of coffee. "Linda made this. She says you take it black." Clara wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "Thank you." They worked side by side that morning, feeding the horses and checking on the pregnant mares. There was an ease between them that hadn't been there before, a rhythm that made the work flow smoothly. At lunchtime, Miguel approached them, wiping his hands on a rag. "Asher, that fence in the north pasture needs fixing again. Those posts are rotting." Asher nodded. "I'll take care of it this afternoon." "I can help," Clara offered. Asher looked at her, considering. "It's heavy work. I'm stronger than I look," she said with a small smile. After lunch, they loaded tools and fence posts into Asher's truck and drove to the north pasture. The fence line stretched along a small creek, and several posts had indeed begun to rot at the base. Clara watched as Asher demonstrated how to remove the old post and set a new one. He worked with efficient movements, his strength evident as he drove the post into the ground with a heavy mallet. "Your turn," he said, stepping back. Clara took the mallet. It was heavier than she expected, but she was determined not to show weakness. She positioned the new post and began driving it into the ground with steady strokes. "Good," Asher said, sounding genuinely impressed. "You've done this before." "My grandfather had a small farm," Clara said, focusing on the post. "Nothing like this, but I helped him with fences and chores during summers." They worked their way down the fence line, replacing 5 posts in total. By the time they finished, dark clouds had gathered in the sky. "Rain's coming," Asher said, looking up. "We should head back." They had just loaded the tools into the truck when the first heavy drops began to fall. Within seconds, it turned into a downpour. "Run for it," Asher called, and they both dashed for the truck. They made it inside, soaked and breathless. Clara pushed her wet hair from her face, and to her surprise, Asher laughed. It was a warm, genuine sound that transformed his serious face. "What's funny?" she asked. "You look like a drowned cat," he said, still smiling. Clara glanced at her reflection in the rearview mirror and had to admit he was right. Her hair was plastered to her head, and water dripped from her nose. "Well, you don't look much better," she said, and was rewarded with another laugh. The rain pounded on the roof of the truck as they sat there, waiting for it to ease up enough to drive back to the barn. "Thank you for your help today," Asher said, his tone more serious now. "You did good work." "I like working outdoors," Clara replied honestly, "even in the rain." Asher studied her for a moment. "You know, most people who come looking for work here don't last more than a week. The hours are long, the pay isn't great, and the work is hard." "I'm not most people," Clara said simply. "No," Asher agreed, "you're not." The intensity in his gaze made Clara look away. There was something happening between them, something unexpected and a little frightening. "The rain's letting up," she said quickly. "We should head back." That evening, Clara helped Linda prepare dinner. She found comfort in the simple tasks of chopping vegetables and stirring pots. Linda talked as they worked, filling the kitchen with stories about the town and the people in it. "Asher seems different since you arrived," Linda said suddenly, catching Clara off guard. "Different how?" Clara asked, trying to sound casual. "Less closed off. I heard him laugh today, really laugh. I haven't heard that sound in years." Clara focused on the carrots she was chopping. "We got caught in the rain. It was nothing. Linda patted her hand. Don't sell yourself short, dear. Whatever it was something. When Asher came in for dinner, his eyes sought out Clara's. There was a warmth there that hadn't been present before. The days began to fall into a comfortable pattern. Clara and Asher would start each morning with coffee in the barn, reviewing the day's tasks. They worked together on various projects around the farm, from fixing equipment to training the younger horses. Clara loved watching Asher with the horses. He had a gentle touch and infinite patience, speaking to them in a low, soothing voice that seemed reserved just for them. It was a side of him few people ever saw. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after Clara's arrival, she was in the barn loft organizing supplies when she heard voices below. Asher and a man she didn't recognize were standing near the tack room, their tones hushed but tense. "You need to be reasonable, Asher," the man was saying. He was older, perhaps in his 60s, wearing an expensive suit that looked out of place in the barn. "The offer from Westland Development is more than fair." "It's not about the money, Howard," Asher replied, his voice cold. "I told you, Stone Ridge is not for sale. Not now, not ever. Your father's debts will be paid. I'm working on it. The spring foals will bring in good money." The older man, Howard, the lawyer Linda had mentioned, sighed heavily. "Not enough, and you know it. The interest is piling up. If you don't act soon, you could lose everything. Not just the undeveloped land, but the farm itself." Clara's heart sank. Stone Ridge was in financial trouble, serious trouble from the sound of it. "I made a promise," Asher said firmly, "to Jason, to my father. This land stays in the family." "Your brother is gone, Asher," Howard said gently, "and holding on to this place won't bring him back. That's enough." Asher's voice was like steel. "I'll find another way." Howard shook his head. "They won't wait forever. Think about it at least. That's all I'm asking." After the lawyer left, Clara waited a few minutes before coming down from the loft. She found Asher still standing in the same spot, his face troubled. "Everything okay?" she asked carefully. Asher looked up, startled. "Fine, just business." Clara hesitated, then said, "I heard some of your conversation." "I wasn't eavesdropping, I was just in the loft and—" "It doesn't concern you," Asher cut her off, his tone harsh. Clara stepped back, hurt by his sudden coldness. "I'm sorry. You're right." Asher's expression softened immediately. "No, I'm sorry. That was unfair." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's just complicated." "The farm is in financial trouble," Clara said. It wasn't a question. Asher nodded reluctantly. "My father expanded too quickly before he died. Took out loans to buy more land. Then the market crashed and—" he shrugged. "The debts have been hanging over Stone Ridge ever since." "And someone wants to buy the land?" "Westland Development," Asher said, his tone bitter. "They want to build luxury homes. They've been after this property for years." Clara looked around the beautiful barn, thinking of the horses grazing peacefully in the pastures. That would be a shame. "It's not going to happen," Asher said firmly. "I'll find another way." That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Asher, about the farm, about the burden he carried. Without fully deciding to, she found herself once again walking out to the pasture in the moonlight. As if drawn by the same restlessness, Asher was there again, leaning against the fence. "We have to stop meeting like this," he said as she approached, a hint of a smile in his voice. Clara leaned on the fence beside him. "Can't sleep either. Too much on my mind." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the horses. "I've been thinking," Clara said finally, "about what I overheard today." Asher tensed beside her. "The farm needs money," she continued, cautiously. "What about expanding in a different way? Something that could bring in income without selling land?" "Like what?" Asher asked, his tone skeptical but not dismissive. "Like riding lessons. Or maybe boarding horses for people in the city. Even farm tours for school groups." Clara turned to face him. "Stone Ridge is beautiful, Asher. People would pay to be part of it, even just for a day." Asher was quiet for a long moment. "Jason used to say something similar, that we should share Stone Ridge with more people." "It sounds like he was smart," Clara said softly. "He was." Asher's voice was filled with sadness. "He was the people person, I was always more comfortable with the horses. You seem to do okay with people, Clara said. Asher looked at her then, really looked at her, and Clara felt her heart speed up. Some people, he said quietly. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken words and feelings. Then Asher cleared his throat and looked away. Your ideas aren't bad, he said. But they would take time to set up, and time is what I don't have. How much time? Clara asked. 3 months, maybe 4. Before the bank starts foreclosure proceedings. Clara's mind was already racing with possibilities. That might be enough. We could start small, build quickly. We? Asher asked, raising an eyebrow. Clara felt her cheeks flush. I just meant I'd be happy to help, if you wanted. Asher studied her face in the moonlight. Why would you do that? You barely know me, or this place. I know enough, Clara said simply. And it was true. In just a few weeks, Stone Ridge had become more of a home to her than anywhere she'd been in years. Before Asher could respond, a sound made them both turn. Willow, the pregnant mare, was making distressed noises in the pasture. Something's wrong, Asher said, instantly alert. He vaulted over the fence and ran toward the horse, Clara close behind him. Willow was pacing in circles, clearly agitated. She's early, Asher said, his voice tense. The foal isn't due for another 2 weeks. What do we need to do? Clara asked, immediately focused on the task at hand. Get her to the foaling stall. It's been prepared, just in case. Together, they carefully guided the nervous mare back to the barn and into the large stall that had been bedded with clean straw. Asher quickly examined her. Call Dr. Hansen, he told Clara, handing her his phone. Numbers in my contacts. Tell her Willow's foaling and it's early. Clara made the call while Asher stayed with the mare, talking to her in that special soft voice. The vet promised to be there within 30 minutes. What can I do? Clara asked when she returned. Stay with her. Talk to her. Horses can sense fear, so stay calm. Asher moved around the stall, gathering supplies. I need to get some things ready. Clara approached Willow slowly, stroking her neck and speaking in soothing tones. It's okay, girl. Everything's going to be fine. You're going to be a great mom. The horse seemed to respond to her voice, calming slightly. Clara continued to stroke her and murmur reassurances. When Asher returned, he looked surprised and pleased. You're good with her. She's just scared, Clara said. We all get scared sometimes. The next hour was intense as they worked together to help Willow. The vet arrived and confirmed that the foal was coming early, but everything seemed to be progressing normally. Still, they all watched carefully for any signs of distress. Clara never left Willow's side, continuing to soothe the mare while Asher and Dr. Hansen prepared for any complications. Finally, with a last great effort from Willow, the foal slid into the world, a tiny, wet creature with spindly legs. It's a filly, Dr. Hansen announced, quickly checking the newborn. She looks healthy, despite being early. The little horse struggled to her feet within minutes, wobbling on legs that seemed too long for her body. Willow turned to nuzzle her baby, a picture of maternal devotion. Clara felt tears in her eyes at the beauty of the moment. When she looked at Asher, she saw that his expression was soft with wonder. She's perfect, he said quietly. Dr. Hansen finished her examination of both mother and baby, pronounced them healthy, and left with instructions to call if anything changed. Clara and Asher stayed in the barn, watching the new family bond. The filly was nursing, her little tail swishing with contentment. What will you name her? Clara asked. Asher thought for a moment. Hope, he said finally. Her name is Hope. Clara smiled, feeling the rightness of it. It's perfect. They sat, side by side on a hay bale outside the stall, reluctant to leave. The pre-dawn light was beginning to filter through the barn windows, casting everything in a soft glow. Thank you for your help tonight, Asher said. I couldn't have done it alone. Yes, you could have, Clara replied honestly, but I'm glad I was here. Asher turned to look at her, his face open and vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. So am I. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch sent a shiver through Clara. Who are you, Clara Wynne? He asked softly. You show up out of nowhere, work harder than anyone I've ever Saying care about this place like it's your own. Who are you running from? Clara froze. For a moment she considered telling him everything. About Richard, about the fear, about the threats. But the words stuck in her throat. It's complicated, she said finally, echoing his words from earlier. Asher nodded, not pushing. When you're ready to talk, I'm ready to listen. The moment was interrupted by Linda's arrival. She gasped with delight at the sight of the new foal. Oh, she's beautiful, Linda exclaimed. What a miracle. As they showed Linda the foal, Asher's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. I need to take this, he said, stepping outside. Linda gave Clara a knowing look. You two were up all night with the mare? Clara nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. You should get some rest, Linda advised. I'll keep an eye on them for a while. Clara nodded gratefully and headed toward her room above the barn. As she passed by the barn door, she overheard Asher's conversation. I told you, Howard, I'm not selling, he was saying, his voice tense again. I don't care what kind of pressure they're applying. Stone Ridge is not... He paused, listening. What do you mean, they have information? Another pause. What kind of information? Clara's blood ran cold. Something in Asher's tone made her stop and listen. That can't be right, Asher was saying. There must be some mistake. I need to see this supposed evidence myself. Clara slipped past quietly, her heart pounding. Whatever was happening, it didn't sound good, but she was too tired to think clearly about it now. She fell onto her bed and was asleep almost immediately. She dreamed of Richard, his handsome face twisted with rage, his voice promising that she would never escape him, that he would find her no matter where she ran. Clara woke with a start, her heart racing. The sun was high in the sky. She had slept well into the afternoon. She quickly changed her clothes and hurried down to the barn. Asher was in the office, staring at some papers spread across his desk. He looked up when she entered, his expression unreadable. How's Willow and the foal? Clara asked. Good. They're resting. Asher's tone was distant, formal. Clara frowned. Is everything okay? Asher picked up one of the papers and held it out to her. I think you should explain this. Clara took the paper, her heart sinking as she saw what it was. A newspaper article with her picture. The headline read, Search continues for missing witness in Kingston fraud case. I can explain, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I hope so, Asher replied, his eyes cold now. Because right now it looks like you're running from the law, and you've brought whatever trouble you're in right to my doorstep. Clara felt her world crumbling around her. The newspaper article in her trembling hands laid bare the secret she'd been running from. Her photo stared back at her, a more polished version of herself from what seemed like a lifetime ago. It's not what it looks like, she said, her voice barely audible over the sound of her pounding heart. Asher crossed his arms. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, I've got a fugitive living on my property. Clara took a deep breath. It was time for the truth. I'm not a criminal. I'm a witness. She placed the article back on the desk. Richard Kingston isn't just some businessman accused of fraud. He was my fiancé. Asher's expression shifted slightly, surprise replacing some of the anger. I worked as his executive assistant at Kingston Financial for 3 years, Clara continued. That's how we met. He was charming, successful, respected in the community. At least that's what everyone saw. She wrapped her arms around herself as if suddenly cold. What they didn't see was how he treated people behind closed doors. The rage, the control, the way he slowly isolated me from friends and family. Abusive? Asher asked, his tone softening slightly. Clara nodded. Emotionally at first, then other ways. She looked away. But that's not why I ran. I ran because I found the evidence. Evidence of what? Richard wasn't just emotionally abusive. He was stealing millions from his investors, creating fake accounts, falsifying returns. I discovered it by accident when I was preparing documents for our annual audit. Clara's voice grew stronger as she continued. I went to the authorities. They promised to protect me if I testified. So why did you run from them? Asher asked, still skeptical. Because someone in the prosecutor's office leaked my name to Richard's people. The night before I was supposed to give my official statement, 2 men broke into my apartment. Clara shuddered at the memory. I got out just in time. Called my contact at the FBI, but it was clear the protection they offered wasn't enough. Richard has connections everywhere, so I disappeared. Asher was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Why here? He finally asked. Why Stone Ridge? I heard about it at a diner in town. Someone mentioned a farm looking for help. It seemed remote, peaceful. Somewhere I could breathe while figuring out what to do next. Clara looked directly at him. I never meant to bring trouble to your door, Asher. I'll leave today. No, Asher said quickly, surprising them both. That's not necessary, but the article says they're looking for you as a witness, not a suspect. Asher ran a hand through his hair. If what you're saying is true, running isn't the answer. You don't understand how powerful Richard is, Clara said. He won't stop until he finds me, and if I testify, his whole empire comes crashing down. He's not going to let that happen. So what's your plan? Keep running forever? Clara had no answer for that. She'd been so focused on getting away that she hadn't thought beyond the next day, the next mile. Asher's expression softened. Look, I'm not going to turn you in, but you need to think about your next steps. Running isn't a life, Clara. The relief that washed over her was so intense that tears sprang to her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Asher looked uncomfortable with her. Gratitude. Don't thank me yet, there's something else. He picked up another paper from his desk. Westland Development's latest offer came with this. He handed her a note printed on expensive letterhead. Clara read it, her blood turning to ice. We have information about your new employee that might interest you. Perhaps we should discuss how this could affect Stone Ridge's future. They're threatening you because of me. It seems that way, Asher agreed. How did they even know I was here? Small towns, word travels, and Westland has been watching Stone Ridge for years, waiting for any leverage. Asher's jaw tightened. This is just their latest tactic. Clara felt sick. Not only was she in danger, but now she was putting Asher and the farm at risk too. I should definitely go, she said, turning toward the door, and play right into their hands. Asher moved to block her path. No, that's exactly what they want. What other choice is there? We fight back, Asher said simply, both of us. Something in his tone made Clara look up at him. The coldness was gone from his eyes, replaced with determination and something else, something warmer. Why would you help me, she asked. You barely know me. I know enough, Asher said, echoing her words from the night before. I know you work hard. I know you care about the horses. I know you've been running scared, but still found the courage to help others. He took a step closer to her. And I know what it's like to have your whole world threatened by forces beyond your control. Clara felt the walls she'd built around her heart begin to crack. I'm scared, Asher. Me too, he admitted, but we're stronger together than apart. Let me help you. Before she could respond, Linda called from outside. Asher? Clara? Where is everyone? The filly is trying to stand again. The moment broke, and they both moved toward the foaling stall, where Linda was watching the new baby. The little horse was wobbling on her spindly legs, determined to stand on her own. Look at her, Linda said proudly. She's got spirit, this one. Just like her mother, Asher replied, glancing at Clara. The rest of the day passed in a blur of farm work and care for the new foal. Clara and Asher didn't have another chance to talk privately, but something had shifted between them. The tension was still there, but it was different now, charged with trust and possibility rather than suspicion. That evening after dinner, as Clara was helping Linda with the dishes, the older woman said casually, "So you and Asher seem to have worked things out." Clara nearly dropped the plate she was drying. "What do you mean?" Linda smiled knowingly. "He was upset this morning after getting that call from Howard. Went storming off to the barn office with those papers. But by lunchtime you two were back to your usual selves, maybe even closer." "It's complicated," Clara said, using what was becoming her standard response. "Love usually is, dear," Linda replied, patting her hand. "Love? No, it's not. We're not," Linda chuckled. "If you say so. But I've known Asher Tate since he was a boy. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Clara felt her cheeks flush. He's just being kind, helping me with a difficult situation. Mm-hmm, Linda hummed, clearly unconvinced. Well, whatever you want to call it, it's nice to see him caring about something besides this farm again. Later, that night, Clara sat on her bed, her few possessions spread out before her. Despite Asher's words, part of her still felt she should leave. Her presence was putting Stone Ridge at risk, and the farm already had enough problems. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Asher standing there, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Can I come in? I want to show you something." Clara nodded, stepping back to let him enter. He noticed her belongings scattered on the bed and frowned. "You're still thinking of leaving?" It wasn't a question, but Clara answered anyway. "I don't want to cause more problems for you. That's why I'm here." Asher held out a thick manila envelope. "I've been doing some research." Clara took the envelope and opened it. Inside were printouts of news articles, financial records, and legal documents, all related to Richard Kingston and his company. "Howard has connections in the financial industry," Asher explained. "I asked him to dig deeper into Kingston's operations." Clara scanned the documents, her eyes widening. "This is extensive." "Kingston's been running this scheme for years," Asher said, sitting on the edge of the desk chair. "And you're not the first person to try to expose him. 2 years ago, one of his junior analysts raised concerns. The guy suddenly withdrew his complaint and moved to another state. No explanation." "He was threatened," Clara said with certainty. "Or paid off. Probably both. But here's the thing, Kingston's house of cards is starting to collapse. There are at least 3 separate investigations into his activities now, not just the one you were involved with. The FBI, the SEC, even the IRS. Hope flickered in Clara's chest for the first time in months. "So they don't need my testimony as badly as before." "They still need it," Asher corrected her. "But now there's more pressure on Kingston, more scrutiny. Which means he's more desperate than ever to find me," Clara finished, the hope fading. "Yes, but it also means the authorities have more resources dedicated to bringing him down and to protecting key witnesses." Asher leaned forward. "I think you should contact your FBI agent again. From what Howard found out, they've built a much stronger case in the month since you disappeared." Clara's mind raced with the implications. Even if that's true, what about Westland's threat to expose me? That puts Stone Ridge at risk. "Let me worry about Westland," Asher said firmly. "They're using your situation as leverage, but their real goal is this land. Always has been. And they're willing to play dirty to get it," Clara said softly. "So, am I?" Asher replied, his expression hardening. "When it comes to protecting what matters." The intensity in his voice sent a shiver through Clara. For the first time, she truly believed that maybe, just maybe, things could work out. "Thank you for doing all this," she said, gesturing to the documents. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Asher stood up, moving closer to her. "Clara, when you showed up at my door that morning, I thought you were just someone looking for work. Then I saw how hard you worked, how much you cared about the animals, about this place." He trailed off, seeming to struggle with his words. "The truth is, Stone Ridge hasn't felt like home since Jason died. But these past weeks with you here, it's starting to feel right again." Clara's heart pounded in her chest. "Asher!" "You don't have to say anything," he continued quickly. "I know this isn't the right time. You've got enough to deal with without me adding to it. I just wanted you to know why I'm helping. It's not just about doing the right thing, it's because you matter to me." Before Clara could respond, a sound from outside caught their attention. Car tires on the gravel driveway. Asher moved to the window. "It's Howard," he said with a frown. "What's he doing here this late?" They hurried downstairs and out to the farmyard, where Howard Jenkins was stepping out of his car, his expression grim. "What's wrong?" Asher asked immediately. "We have a problem," Howard replied, glancing at Clara. "A big one." He handed Asher a folded newspaper. The headline made Clara's blood run cold. "Kingston fraud case witness spotted in rural community." "It doesn't name you specifically," Howard explained to Clara, "or mention Stone Ridge, but it's only a matter of time before someone makes the connection." "How did this happen?" Asher demanded. "Westland," Howard said simply. "They've been asking questions in town showing your picture," he nodded to Clara. They're not being subtle about it. Clara felt the walls closing in again. They're doing Kingston's work for him. But why? Asher asked. What does Westland gain by exposing you? Pressure, Howard replied. They think if they threaten to reveal Ms. Wynn's location to Kingston, you'll be forced to sell to protect her. Asher's face darkened with anger. They're using her as a pawn to get my land. Exactly, Howard confirmed. And from what I've heard, Kingston's people are already on their way here, maybe a day away at most. Clara felt her legs go weak. Then it's over. I have to leave. Now. No, Asher said firmly, taking her hand. There's another option. He turned to Howard. Call your contact at the FBI. Tell them their witness is ready to come in, but they need to send protection tonight. Not tomorrow, not in a few hours. Tonight, Howard nodded. I'll see what I can do. But Asher, you need to think about what this means for Stone Ridge. Westland's ultimatum... I don't care about Westland's ultimatum, Asher cut him off. Some things are more important than land. The lawyer looked from Asher to Clara, understanding dawning in his eyes. I'll make the call, he said, moving back to his car for privacy. When they were alone, Clara turned to Asher. I can't let you risk everything for me. It's my choice to make, he replied. And I'm not just doing this for you. Westland, Kingston, men like them think they can take whatever they want, destroy whatever stands in their way. I'm tired of feeling powerless. Clara understood that feeling all too well. What if the FBI can't get here in time? Then we'll figure something else out. Asher squeezed her hand. But you're not facing this alone anymore, Clara. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Howard returned, his expression cautiously optimistic. My contact says they can have her team here by morning. They want Ms. Wynn to stay put until then. They've been looking for her for months. Relief washed over Clara, followed immediately by new fear. A lot can happen between now and morning. We'll take turns keeping watch, Asher said. Howard, can you stay too? The lawyer nodded. Of course. They moved inside the farmhouse, drawing the curtains and turning off most of the lights. Howard made more calls, confirming details with his FBI contact. Asher checked all the doors and windows, making sure everything was secure. Clara sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that Linda had pressed into them before heading to bed, seemingly unaware of the drama unfolding. As the night wore on, Clara found it impossible to rest. Every sound from outside made her tense up, expecting the worst. Asher noticed and sat beside her. Try to get some sleep, he suggested gently. Howard and I will keep watch. I can't, Clara admitted. Every time I close my eyes, I see Richard's face, the way he looked when he was angry. Asher's expression darkened. He can't hurt you anymore. You don't know him like I do, Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. When he wants something, he doesn't stop, and he wants to silence me before I can testify. Well, he'll have to go through me first, Asher said with quiet determination, and I'm not easy to get through. Despite everything, Clara smiled. No, you're not. They lapsed into comfortable silence, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. Clara found comfort in his solid presence beside her. When this is over, Asher said suddenly, what will you do? Where will you go? The question caught Clara off guard. She'd been so focused on surviving that she hadn't thought about what came after. I don't know. Start over somewhere, I guess. You could stay here, Asher suggested, trying to sound casual and failing. Stone Ridge could use someone like you, especially if we go ahead with those ideas you had, the riding lessons, boarding, farm tours. Clara's heart filled with a strange mixture of hope and fear. You'd want me to stay, even knowing all the trouble I've brought? Because of all that, Asher corrected her. You've shown more courage and strength than anyone I've ever met. Stone Ridge would be lucky to have you. He paused, then added more softly, I would be lucky to have you. Before Clara could respond, headlights swept across the front of the house. Howard, who had been dozing in an armchair, jerked awake. Is it them? Clara asked, panic rising in her throat. Asher moved to the window and carefully peered out. Black SUV, I can't see who's inside. Kingston's men drive black SUVs, Clara said, her voice shaking. Howard joined Asher at the window. The FBI wouldn't arrive in an unmarked vehicle without calling first. Get to the back door, Asher instructed Clara. If I give the signal, run for the barn, take my truck, keys are hanging by the door. Clara shook her head. I'm not leaving you to face them. This isn't up for debate, Asher said firmly. Go, now. Reluctantly, Clara moved toward the kitchen. Through the back window, she could see the barn, dark and silent in the night. Beyond it lay the pastures where the horses grazed peacefully, unaware of the human drama unfolding. From the front of the house, she heard the sound of car doors closing, then footsteps on the porch. Her heart hammered in her chest as the doorbell rang, the sound impossibly loud in the quiet house. Howard looked at Asher, who nodded. The lawyer moved to the door, pulling it open just enough to see who was outside. Mr. Jenkins, a man's voice said, I thought we might find you here. Mr. Westland, Howard replied stiffly. It's rather late for a social call. Clara felt her blood run cold. James Westland himself, the owner of Westland Development, was at the door. And if the rumors about his connections to organized crime were true, he was as dangerous as Richard in his own way. This isn't social, Westland replied. I'm here to speak with Mr. Tate and Ms. Wynne if she's available. I'm afraid that's not possible, Howard began. But Asher stepped forward. Let him in, Asher said, his voice hard. I want to hear what he has to say. Howard reluctantly opened the door wider, revealing a tall, distinguished-looking man in his 60s. Despite the late hour, James Westland was impeccably dressed in an expensive suit. Behind him stood two younger men with the unmistakable build of security personnel. Your associates can wait outside, Asher said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Westland hesitated, then nodded to his men, who remained on the porch as he stepped inside. Mr. Tate, Westland said with a cold smile, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Cut the crap, Asher replied bluntly. We both know why you're here. Westland's smile didn't waver. Direct, as always. Very well. I came to deliver a message in person. My offer for Stone Ridge expires at noon tomorrow. After that, not only will the price drop significantly, but I'll be forced to share what I know about your guest with certain interested parties. You mean Kingston, Asher said flatly. I mean whoever might find such information valuable, Westland corrected smoothly. Business is business, after all. And threatening a witness in a federal investigation? Is that business too? Westland shrugged. I'm not threatening anyone, merely pointing out potential consequences of your continued refusal to see reason. Clara had heard enough. She stepped into the room, her fear giving way to anger. You're working with Richard, aren't you? That's why you're so interested in finding me. Westland turned to her, his expression calculating. Ms. Wynne, I presume. How nice to finally meet you. He straightened his tie. As for Richard Kingston, let's just say we have mutual interests. He wants you found and I want this land. Cooperation benefits us both. Except you're not getting either, Asher said, moving to stand beside Clara. The FBI will be here in a few hours. They're very interested in talking to Clara, and I'm sure they'll be equally interested in your connection to Kingston's crimes. For the first time, Westland's confident demeanor faltered slightly. The FBI? You're bluffing. Call my contact yourself, Howard offered, holding out his phone. Special Agent Marcus would be happy to confirm. Westland's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. After a moment, he buttoned his jacket and straightened his shoulders. Well played, Mr. Tate. It seems I've underestimated you. People usually do, Asher replied evenly. Nevertheless, my offer stands until noon tomorrow. Think carefully about your next move. Westland turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Ms. Wynne, Richard sends his regards. He's very eager to reconnect with you. The threat in his words was unmistakable. Clara fought to keep her expression neutral, refusing to show how deeply his words had shaken her. After Westland and his men had driven away, Clara let out a shaky breath. He's going straight to Richard. They'll be here before the FBI. Maybe not, Howard said. I wasn't bluffing about Agent Marcus. He said they're sending their best team, and they're moving as fast as they can. It's still going to be a long night, Asher said grimly. He turned to Clara. You should try to rest. We'll wake you if anything happens. Clara knew she wouldn't be able to sleep, but she nodded anyway, too exhausted to argue. She moved to the living room couch, while Asher and Howard remained in the kitchen talking in low voices. Despite her certainty that sleep would be impossible, the emotional drain of the day soon pulled her under. Her last conscious thought was of Asher, and the way he had stood beside her, unafraid to face whatever came next. She woke with a start to the sound of more vehicles approaching. The first light of dawn was just beginning to filter through the windows. Asher was already at the front window, tension evident in every line of his body. "FBI or Kingston?" Clara asked, her mouth dry with fear. "Neither," Asher replied, his voice strangely flat. "It's Westland again, and he's brought company." Clara joined him at the window. Outside, 3 vehicles had pulled up. Westland's black SUV, a sleek silver car she didn't recognize, and a police cruiser. "Why would he bring the police?" she asked. "Leverage," Howard answered from behind them. "Make it official, put pressure on us." Asher's jaw tightened. "Stay inside, both of you. I'll handle this." Before either of them could protest, he was out the door, striding across the farmyard to meet the newcomers. Clara watched anxiously as Westland emerged from his vehicle, accompanied by the same 2 men as before. From the silver car stepped a figure that made Clara's blood freeze in her veins. Richard Kingston himself, looking every bit as handsome and imposing as she remembered. His perfect suit, his confident stride, the charming smile that had fooled so many. And from the police car came the local sheriff, looking uncomfortable with the whole situation. Asher stopped several feet away from the group, his stance wide and protective, blocking the path to the house. Though Clara couldn't hear what was being said, the body language told a clear story. Westland, speaking smoothly, gesturing toward the house. The sheriff, looking uncertain. Richard, standing slightly apart, his cold eyes fixed on the farmhouse, searching for her, and Asher unmoved, shaking his head firmly. The standoff continued for several minutes. Then, just as Richard took a step forward, another sound cut through the morning air. The unmistakable sound of multiple vehicles approaching fast. 3 black SUVs with government plates roared up the driveway, followed by 2 marked police cars. Men and women in FBI jackets poured out, weapons at the ready. Clara felt a surge of relief so powerful it made her knees weak. Howard steadied her with a hand on her arm. "Perfect timing," he said with a smile. Outside, the scene changed. Rapidly. The FBI agents surrounded Kingston and Westland. The local sheriff stepped aside, clearly relieved to have federal authorities taking over. Richard's confident demeanor crumbled as an agent approached him with handcuffs. Clara stepped onto the porch, Asher immediately moving to her side. Together they watched as Richard Kingston was placed under arrest, his rights being read to him as he was led to one of the vehicles. "It's over," Asher said softly, taking her hand. "Really over." A tall woman approached them, showing her FBI credentials. "Agent Roberts, you must be Clara Wynne. We've been looking for you for a long time." "I'm sorry I ran," Clara said. "I was scared." "Understandable," the agent replied. "Kingston's reach was extensive. But we've been building our case, and with your testimony, he's going away for a very long time." She glanced at Westland, who was being questioned by other agents. Along with some of his associates, it seems. The next few hours passed in a blur of statements and explanations. Clara told her story, the full story, while Asher explained Westland's threats and how they were connected to Kingston. By midday, the authorities had taken both Richard and Westland away. Agent Roberts assured Clara that she would remain under protection until the trial was over, but that she was free to choose where she wanted to stay in the meantime. "You're not in federal custody," she explained. "You're a witness, not a suspect. We just want to make sure you're safe." As the FBI team prepared to leave, promising to return the next day to continue the investigation, Clara found herself standing with Asher in the farmyard, watching the vehicles drive away. "So," Asher said, breaking the silence. "What happens now?" Clara turned to him, suddenly shy. "You asked me what I wanted to do when this was over. I remember. I'd like to stay," she said simply, "if that offer is still open." Asher's smile was like the sunrise, slow, warm, and full of promise. "It is. Very much so." He reached for a her hand, and she took it, feeling for the first time in months that she was exactly where she belonged. From the barn came the soft nickering of a horse, Willow calling to her foal. "New life, new beginnings. Come on," Asher said. "Let's go check on Hope." Together they walked toward the barn, toward the future that was suddenly bright with possibility. What neither of them saw was the man watching from a car parked on the distant road. A man who worked not for Kingston or Westland, but for someone else entirely. Someone whose connection to Stonebridge went back much further. Someone with secrets of their own. Secrets that would soon threaten everything Clara and Asher had just fought to protect. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the farmhouse kitchen as Clara poured herself a cup of coffee. 2 weeks had passed since the dramatic events that had ended with Richard Kingston and James Westland being taken away by the FBI. The farm had settled back into its peaceful routine, but with one significant difference. Clara was now officially part of it. "Morning," Asher said as he entered the kitchen, his hair still damp from the shower. He moved beside her, resting his hand briefly on her lower back, a casual touch that still sent warmth spreading through her. "Good morning," she replied, handing him a mug. Linda made cinnamon rolls before she left for her sisters. Asher took the coffee gratefully. "You're up early. Couldn't sleep?" Clara shrugged. "Just excited about today, I guess. Our first official riding lesson." The corner of Asher's mouth lifted in a half smile. Our first official anything. It had been Clara's idea to start small, weekend riding lessons for local children. Word had spread quickly through town, and they already had 6 students signed up for the first class. "I still need to set up the riding ring," Asher said, glancing at his watch. "Kids won't arrive until 10. "I'll help after I check on Willow and Hope," Clara replied. The mare and her foal had become her special charges, and she visited them. First thing every morning. As they finished their coffee, Asher's phone rang. He frowned at the screen. "It's Howard again." Clara tried not to show her concern. The lawyer had been calling more frequently in the past few days, and each call left Asher looking troubled. Despite Westland's arrest, Stoneridge's financial problems hadn't magically disappeared. "I'll head to the barn," she said, giving him privacy for the call. Outside, the spring morning was perfect. Clear blue sky, gentle breeze carrying the scent of fresh grass and flowers. Clara breathed deeply, still amazed at how quickly Stoneridge had come to feel like home. The FBI had arranged for her to stay at a safe house in the city during the investigation, but after hearing her testimony, they agreed she would be safe. Enough at the farm with regular check-ins and a security system Asher had installed. The preliminary hearings against Richard had already begun, with the full trial expected to start in a few months. In the barn, Willow nickered softly as Clara approached. The mare's gentle brown eyes seemed to hold genuine affection as Clara stroked her neck. "Good morning, beautiful," Clara murmured. "And how's your little one today?" Hope, now 3 weeks old, was growing stronger every day. Her spindly legs had steadied, and she pranced around her mother with boundless energy. When she saw Clara, she trotted over, nudging her hand for treats. "Always hungry, aren't you?" Clara laughed, offering the foal a small apple. "Just like your mum." As she finished checking on the horses, Clara heard voices from the farmyard. Asher was speaking to someone, a stranger from the sound of it. Curious, she stepped outside. A middle-aged man in business casual clothing was standing, with Asher near the barn entrance. His sleek car parked by the house looked out of place among the farm vehicles. "Clara," Asher called, his tone carefully neutral. "This is Martin Evans. He's a real estate developer from the city." Clara's heart sank as she approached. "Another developer? So soon after Westland?" "Ms. Wynne," Evans said with a professional smile, extending his hand. "Pleasure to meet you. I've heard a lot about Stoneridge lately." "I'm sure you have," Clara replied coolly, shaking his hand briefly. "Mr. Evans was just leaving," Asher said, his posture tense. "At least think about my offer," Evans pressed, handing Asher a business card. "It's substantially better than what Westland was proposing, and with no strings attached." "I'll keep that in mind," Asher replied, though his tone suggested the card would be in the trash before Evans reached his car. After the developer drove away, Clara turned to Asher. "So it begins again?" Apparently word's gotten out that Stone Ridge might be financially vulnerable. Asher ran a hand through his hair in frustration. With Westland out of the picture, the vultures are circling. What did Howard say? Clara asked gently. Asher's expression darkened. Nothing good. The bank is getting impatient. We have about 2 months before they call in the loans. The riding lessons will help, Clara said, though they both knew it wouldn't be nearly enough. And we could start the boarding program sooner than planned. Maybe. Asher forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Let's focus on today. Our first students will be here soon. They spent the next hour setting up the riding ring, laying out equipment, and preparing the gentle older horses they'd selected for the lessons. Clara watched Asher carefully leading an old mare named Buttercup through basic commands, showing infinite patience as the horse responded to his gentle guidance. Over the past 2 weeks, their relationship had slowly evolved. They hadn't put a name to it yet, but they'd shared long talks under the stars, held hands while walking the property, and once, after a particularly beautiful sunset, Asher had kissed her, softly, carefully, as if she might break. Clara had kissed him back with all the emotion she'd kept bottled up for so long, gratitude, hope, and something deeper that she wasn't quite ready to name. Now, watching him with the horses, she felt that same emotion welling up inside her. Regardless of what happened with the farm, she knew that finding Asher, finding this place, had changed her forever. At 10 o'clock, the first family arrived, a woman with twin 7-year-old girls who couldn't stop bouncing with excitement at the prospect of riding a real horse. Soon the farmyard was filled with children and parents, the air buzzing with excitement and nervous energy. Clara took charge naturally, gathering the group by the fence. "Welcome to Stone Ridge Farm. I'm Clara, and this is Asher, the owner. Today, we're going to learn the basics of horse safety and how to properly approach and lead a horse." As she spoke, Clara felt Asher's eyes on her, warm with approval and something more. She'd found her calling here, working with the horses, teaching the children, helping to build something meaningful. The lesson went better than they could have hoped. By the end, each child had successfully led a horse around the ring and learned to brush them properly. The parents were impressed by the thorough safety instructions and gentle approach. "Will you be doing these lessons every weekend?" one mother asked as they were leaving. "That's the plan," Clara replied, "and we're starting a boarding program next month for horse owners who want quality care but don't have their own property." "My sister has 2 horses she keeps at that expensive stable in Riverdale," the woman said thoughtfully. "I'll tell her about this place. The drive would be worth it for the savings, I bet." After the last family left, Clara and Asher sat on the fence watching the horses graze peacefully in the afternoon sun. "You were amazing with those kids," Asher said, his shoulder pressed against hers, "especially the little boy who was scared." Clara smiled, remembering how the nervous 5-year-old had finally gathered the courage to touch Buttercup's nose. He just needed someone to believe he could do it. "Like someone else I know, Asher," said softly, taking her hand. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, savoring the moment of peace. "Do you think it's enough?" she asked after a while. "The lessons, the boarding, will it be enough to save Stone Ridge?" Asher was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he admitted finally, "but we're going to keep fighting." "Together?" Clara said. "Together," he agreed, squeezing her hand. The moment was interrupted by the sound of tires on gravel. They both tensed, thoughts of developers and bankers immediately coming to mind. But the vehicle that appeared was a familiar FBI SUV. Agent Roberts stepped out, looking more casual than during her previous visits, in a simple blazer and jeans. "Hope I'm not interrupting," she called as she approached. "Not at all," Clara replied, sliding off the fence. "Is everything okay?" "Just a routine check-in," the agent assured her. "And I have some updates on the Kingston case you might want to hear." They moved to the farmhouse porch, where Linda had left a pitcher of iced tea before departing for her sisters. As they settled into the chairs, Agent Roberts pulled out a tablet. "First, some good news. Kingston's financial records have revealed even more fraud than we initially suspected. The case against him is rock solid. Even without your testimony, Clara, though that remains crucial." Clara nodded, relief washing over her. "And Westland?" His connection to Kingston went deeper than we thought. Turns out, Westland Development was laundering money for several of Kingston's shadow companies. Agent Roberts swiped through some documents on her tablet. The interesting part is what we found when we started looking into Westland's interest in Stone Ridge, specifically. Asher leaned forward. What do you mean? This farm seems to have attracted an unusual amount of attention from some powerful people over the years. Westland wasn't the first to try to acquire it, just the most persistent. She turned the tablet so they could see a timeline of purchase offers dating back nearly 20 years. The question is why? Clara looked at Asher, who seemed genuinely confused. It's good land, he said slowly. Great location, but there are other properties nearby just as suitable for development. Exactly, Agent Roberts agreed. So we dug deeper, and we found something interesting in some old county records. She pulled up another document. It seems that back in the 1950s, before your family owned this land, it was the site of some unusual activity. What kind of activity? Clara asked, intrigued despite herself. Government research. The records are vague, but there are references to mineral surveys and extraction tests. Agent Roberts swiped to another document. Fast forward to the 1970s when your grandfather bought the property, Asher. The purchase price was surprisingly low, considering the size and location. Asher frowned. I never knew that. My father didn't talk much about how the family acquired Stone Ridge. He always just said it was meant to be ours. Well, there might have been something to that, Agent Roberts continued, because according to these geological surveys done in the early 2000s, there's a strong possibility that Stone Ridge sits on top of a significant rare earth element deposit. Rare earth elements? Clara repeated. Like what they use in electronics? Agent Roberts nodded. Exactly. Critical components for everything from smartphones to electric vehicles to military equipment. And the US has very few domestic sources. So, Westland wasn't just after the land for housing development, Asher said slowly, realization dawning. He knew about this potential deposit. It appears so. And given the increasing value of these materials, especially with current supply chain issues with China, the rights to this deposit could be worth hundreds of millions, Asher finished, looking stunned. Clara's mind raced with the implications. Does this mean... It means, Mr. Tate, Agent Roberts said, that your financial problems might be over, but it also means you need to be very careful about who you deal with going forward. This kind of discovery attracts attention, not all of it good. After Agent Roberts left, promising to send more information about how to properly verify and potentially develop the resource, Clara and Asher sat in silence, trying to process what they'd learned. I can't believe it, Asher finally said. All this time Jason and I were working ourselves to the bone trying to keep the farm afloat, and the real value was under our feet. It explains why your father took on so much debt to acquire more land, Clara said thoughtfully. He must have known, or at least suspected. And never told anyone, Asher added, a hint of bitterness in his voice. Not even his sons, Clara placed her hand over his. Maybe he was trying to protect you. If what Agent Roberts said is true, knowledge of these deposits could be dangerous in the wrong hands. Asher nodded slowly. That would be like him. Always. Trying to shoulder everything himself. He looked out over the farm, his expression thoughtful. Jason would have loved this. The mystery, the potential. He was always the visionary. And what about you? Clara asked gently. What do you want to do with this information? Asher was quiet for a long moment. I don't know yet. But whatever happens, Stone Ridge stays in the family. No developers, no corporations taking over. He turned to look at her, his eyes intense. This is our home, yours and mine. Clara's heart skipped at his words, at the simple way he included her in the future of Stone Ridge. Our home, she repeated softly. Later that evening, after a simple dinner, they walked hand in hand to the pasture fence, their spot where so many important conversations had taken place. The horses grazed peacefully in the distance, unaware of the momentous discoveries of the day. I've been thinking, Asher said as they leaned against the fence, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. About the rare earth elements. And? Clara prompted when he fell silent. I want to do this right. Environmentally responsible, beneficial to the community. He turned to face her. If we develop this resource, it has to be on our terms. No cutting corners, no destroying the land. Clara smiled. I wouldn't expect anything less from you. And I want to use part of the proceeds to set up a foundation in Jason's name. Something to help family farms stay afloat, to preserve agricultural land from development. He would love that, Clara said softly. Asher nodded, then took both her hands in his. But before any of that happens, I need to know something. His voice was serious, his eyes searching hers. Are you staying, Clara? Really staying? Not just until the trial or until things settle down, but for good? Clara felt tears prick her eyes. After months of running, of fear, of uncertainty, the question touched her deeply. Is that what you want? She asked, needing to hear him. Say it. More than anything, Asher replied without hesitation. When you knocked on my door that morning, I had no idea you would change everything, but you did. You made Stone Ridge feel like home again. You made me feel alive again. Clara's heart swelled with emotion. I spent so long running from my past, I never thought I'd find a future I wanted to run towards, but I have. Here, with you. Asher's face lit up with a smile that took her breath away. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. I've been carrying this around for days, waiting for the right moment. It wasn't a ring, it was too soon for that, but a small, simple key on a horseshoe-shaped keychain. It's to the farmhouse, he explained. I know you have the spare, but I wanted you to have your own. Because this isn't just where you're staying anymore, Clara. It's your home if you want it to be. Clara took the key, her hands trembling slightly. I want that more than anything. Asher pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. Then, stay. Build this place with me. Help me make it everything it could be. I will, she whispered. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like a promise. Of home, of healing, of hope. As the last light of day faded from the sky, they walked back to the farmhouse hand in hand, leaving behind the fence where so much had changed between them. In the barn, Willow and Hope rested peacefully in their stall. The little foal had grown stronger each day, just like the bond between Clara and Asher, just like Clara herself. The farmhouse lights glowed warm and inviting in the gathering dusk. No longer a place Clara had come to by chance, seeking temporary shelter, but a home she had chosen. A home she would help build and protect. As they reached the porch, Asher paused, looking down at her with so much love in his eyes that it took her breath away. Welcome home, Clara, he said softly. And for the first time in her life, Clara truly knew what those words meant. The next morning, they were awakened by the sound of Linda's arrival, the housekeeper calling up the stairs with news that Miguel had spotted something unusual in the north pasture. Still blinking away sleep, Clara and Asher followed Miguel to a section of fence near the creek. The older man pointed to the ground where clear footprints showed someone had been walking the property line. Found these this morning, Miguel said, concern evident in his voice. Too big to be kids, and they weren't here yesterday when I checked the fence. Asher knelt to examine the prints. Someone was surveying the property boundary. Recently, too, these are fresh. Clara felt a chill despite the warm morning. Agent Roberts warned us people might become interested once word gets out about the mineral deposits. I don't think word has gotten out yet, Asher said slowly, studying the surrounding area. This is too soon. He stood brushing dirt from his jeans. Someone else knows, someone who's been watching Stone Ridge for a while. Like Martin Evans, Clara suggested. The developer who came yesterday? Maybe, Asher agreed. But how would he know about the deposits unless he has a connection to Westland, Clara finished his thought, or to the original government research. They spent the morning checking the rest of the property, but found no further signs of trespassing. Still, Asher called Agent Roberts to report the incident, and she promised to have agents drive by regularly for the next few weeks. As they walked back to the house, Clara's phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. Cautiously, she answered. Ms. Wynne. This is Amanda Chen from the District Attorney's Office. The woman's voice was crisp and professional. I'm calling about the Kingston case. Clara's grip tightened on the phone. Yes? There's been a development. Kingston's attorneys have approached, thus about a possible plea deal. What kind of deal? Clara asked, her heart racing. Asher moved closer, his hand resting supportively on her back. He's offering to plead guilty to several of the lesser charges in exchange for a reduced sentence, the attorney explained. But for us to consider it, we would need your testimony about his threats against you to establish the pattern of intimidation. When? Clara asked simply. We'd need you to come in tomorrow to give a formal deposition. Agent Roberts could bring you in for security. After getting the details and ending the call, Clara turned to Asher. They want me to testify tomorrow about Richard's threats about why I ran. Asher's face showed concern but also pride. Are you going to do it? Clara nodded firmly. Yes, it's time to stop running and face this. Besides, she added with a small smile, I have something to come back to now. The next day, Agent Roberts drove Clara to the federal building in the city. The deposition was grueling. 5 hours of questions about Richard's business practices, his controlling behavior, the threats he'd made. Clara answered everything truthfully, her voice growing stronger with each response. When it was over, the district attorney himself thanked her. Your testimony is compelling, Ms. Wynne. Combined with the financial evidence, it presents a devastating picture of Kingston's character and actions. Will he accept the plea deal? Clara asked. His attorneys certainly want him to, the DA replied. 20 years is a lot better than the life sentence he's facing if we go to trial. And Westland? He's already cooperating, giving us everything he has on Kingston and others in exchange for leniency. His information about the rare earth deposits at Stone Ridge was particularly interesting to several federal agencies. Clara tensed. What agencies? Department of Energy, Department of Defense. Rare earth elements are considered strategically important resources. The DA must have noticed her concern because he added, Don't worry, Ms. Wynne, Mr. Tate's ownership of the land is secure, but he might be getting some official visitors soon. As Agent Roberts drove her back to Stone Ridge, Clara stared out, the window watching the landscape change from urban to rural. After months of fear of looking over her shoulder, she had finally confronted her past. You did well today, Agent Roberts said, breaking the comfortable silence. It takes courage to do what you did. I had something worth being brave for, Clara replied simply. When they arrived at the farm, Asher was waiting on the porch. Clara barely waited for the car to stop before she was out the door and in his arms. How did it go? He asked, holding her tight. Good, she said. Really good. It's almost over. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky, Asher took her hand. I've been thinking about names, he said. Names? Clara repeated, puzzled. For the foundation, Jason's foundation. He looked out over the farm, his expression soft with memory and hope. I was thinking new beginnings, Clara smiled, squeezing his hand. It's perfect. Like you, Asher said, turning to face her, showing up at my door that morning, giving both of us second chance. Clara leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Who would have thought a simple knock could change everything? Above them, the stars shone brightly, witnesses to the home and future they were building together. Stone Ridge Farm stood peaceful in the night, its secrets now known but its beauty unchanged. A place of new beginnings, of healing, of hope. Clara thought of all the twists and turns that had led her here, the fear that had driven her to run, the courage it had taken to knock on a stranger's door, the trust that had grown between them day by day. One simple knock had changed everything, and whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together on this land that had brought them both exactly where they needed to be, home.